You are listening to Co-Create Your Life. In this podcast, we delve deep into the law of attraction, dispel common misconceptions, and give our listeners the tools they need to build a magical, purposeful existence in their everyday lives. Reclaim the creative power you already possess and join us at co-creationcoaching.org/create. That's co-creationcoaching.org/create.
Welcome to Co-Create Your Life. This is episode 19, The Opposing Forces Behind the Law of Attraction. I am Brandon Oliveris.
And I'm Christine Oliveris.
And I'm Justin Williams.
And today we are coming back for another podcast to talk about a certain analogy that I've been using lately, actually, that I think hopefully will really help. I've been using it with my clients. I brought it up in one of the recent support calls, but I think it really helps to clarify where exactly you are in the manifestation process, because I think people have trouble intuitively sensing where they are and how to progress forward from where they are. So we'll talk about that based on these two opposing forces. But first, some announcements. If you would like to read the show notes, the transcript, or to leave a comment, you can go to co-creationcoaching.org/create019. I can't wait till next time because it'll be number 20. If you would like to ask a question, you can go, which by the way, would really appreciate you asking questions, because after a while, we're like, what should we talk about next? So we always appreciate questions. If we're interested in answering it, then we certainly will. To ask a question, you can go to co-creationcoaching.org/ask/create. And that will take you to the place where you can submit your question. So, once again, today we are discussing the two opposing forces behind the law of attraction and how they work together, what their purposes are, and how you can use them to move forward in your manifestations. So first of all, what are these opposing forces? When I say them, it's going to kind of seem underwhelming, I think, but trust me, they're because it's like, I know you already know the names of these, but the ways that they work together is really what we're focused on today. So those opposing forces are momentum and resistance. Again, I know it's sort of obvious, like, okay, of course, there's momentum forward and there's resistance holding you back. Okay, so what's new here? To first of all get into it, there's an analogy I like to use. And for anyone who's familiar with airplanes, I used to be obsessed with airplanes when I was a kid.
To the point where you created a computer program all about them.
I did create a computer program.
Not to spill your secrets.
It was very boring because it was just for blind people, so like there were no graphics or anything. But it was fun for me.
Yeah, it's fun for us. I never played.
Yeah. Anyway, because
So you should recreate it.
I know I should. When I was younger, I went on a few flights. When I was 5, I flew to Texas for the Make-A-Wish Foundation. I received a wish.
I thought you drove.
No, we flew.
Oh.
That's cool. You got a wish.
I did get a wish because I had a brain tumor. And
we won't tell them what the wish was.
No, we won't tell them what the wish was. It was kind of embarrassing.
Oh, no, it's not. Not for a kid.
So, and then when I was about 11 or so, I flew to New Jersey there was a blind, like a camp type thing for independent living, I guess.
I don't know why it is. It's not like it's far from PA.
I don't know, but we got a private jet. It was fun. So after that, I got obsessed with planes. I loved airplanes. I got like someone made me like this nice little runway, and I had this toy plane, and anyway. But I got obsessed with planes, and I learned all about them, and I was always good in science, so I learned about aerodynamics.
Just as an FYI, because I used to be I don't like landing, so Brandon would go like, "We're gonna land in 3, 2, 1," and he
Yeah, that's right. Because we flew to Las Vegas in 2010, and like, okay, now pretty soon the landing gear is gonna pop down, and you're gonna feel a little jolt, and then we'll be landing, and then.
I like planes.
I love planes.
I do too, but I don't like landing.
I told Christine if I could see, I totally get my pilot's license because I love planes.
I love planes.
Bringing it back to the law of attraction, there are 4 basic principles of aerodynamics, and those are thrust, drag, lift, and weight. Okay, lift and weight we're not going to really discuss here because they don't really matter when you're flying level on the horizontal. So we're not going to. It doesn't really. We're not going to really use that in the analogy. But for our analogy, we'll use thrust and drag. Those are the two. Those are opposing forces. So thrust and drag are opposing forces, and lift and weight are opposing forces. Thrust is what pushes you forward, and drag is what pulls you backwards. Now, in this analogy, it fits really well because thrust is very much like momentum. And drag is very much like resistance. Okay? So there's some interesting properties of these forces that translate perfectly into the law of attraction. Basically, what you have to realize is that the faster you're trying to move forward, so the more the thrust is, the greater the thrust, also the greater the drag. So basically, if you're in an airplane and you want to go faster, there are two ways of increasing your momentum. You can increase the thrust, which is like, revving up the engines, I guess, and, making it go actually faster, putting more power into the engine. Or you can cut the drag. You can reduce the drag. So that's why planes, when they go up in the air, they bring up the landing gear into the body of the plane and whatnot, and there are different things they can do to reduce the drag. So those are the two ways. If you increase thrust, you're going to go faster. If you decrease drag, you're going to go faster.
Okay.
Because there's not as much holding you back. You can see that your speed is basically the balance between your thrust and your drag. I'll translate this back into our terms in a second. But the thing about these forces, you can't have one without the other. If you have zero thrust, you also have zero drag because you're not moving. The more thrust you have, the more drag you have, because have you ever been going down, if you're in a car, or if you're driving or riding in a car, in our case, we don't drive, and you're going down the highway and the window's open, you stick your hand out,
Yep.
and you have all the air, and if you're going 35 or something, is barely anything. But if you're going 70 or 75, it's really, really, really hard. Right? There's a lot of air resistance.
I love to do it. It's so
That's
cool.
That's drag. So the faster you go, the more drag there is. So how does that translate to law of attraction? Basically, you have your momentum, which is your forward, moving speed, I guess. I like to call it power as well, to differentiate it from actual momentum. And you have your resistance, which is the drag. Okay, so these translate perfectly into the analogy I used because you have to have both. If you have no momentum, you have no resistance, first of all. Zero momentum, zero resistance. Okay, or we could say zero power, zero resistance, if you like. That's because if you're not moving forward, you have nothing to push against. So if people will get this thing where they're just kind of hanging around in life. We'll talk about the state in a little bit. They're just kind of hanging in life, and, things are just, they're not really pushing against anything. They don't really have desires. They don't really have resistance. It doesn't mean they're necessarily happy. It just means they're sort of whatever. I mean, they could be happy, but, if you're not moving forward, you also don't have resistance. Okay? And similarly, number 2, there are 2 ways of moving forward. And we'll explain all these more later on. There are 2 ways of moving forward. Number 1, increase your power or momentum moving forward. That's pushing you forward. Or number 2, decrease the resistance that's holding you back. Cut the resistance, you're going to shoot forward. But you have to have momentum to do that. You can't just have zero momentum because then you won't move anywhere. But cut the resistance and you're automatically going to jump forward. Okay, so that's the other way. Those are the 2 ways of moving forward in your manifestation. Number 3 is that, just as in aerodynamics, the faster you're moving, the more resistance you have. Okay? So the bigger your goal is, the more you're moving forward, the faster you're trying to move forward, the more resistance you're going to have. If you're just trying to get, let's say, just a parking space close to the store, close to the restaurant or something, and manifesting it, that's like in your car going about 15 miles an hour, and you stick your hand out the window oh, whatever, there's no resistance here, But if you're trying to, let's say, increase your income by 100%, then you're flying down the road about 100 miles an hour, and you're really going to feel it if you stick your hand out. That's the resistance.
Because really, it would be. I was thinking about decreasing drag would be almost like removing obstacles out of the way.
Exactly.
That's how I kind of thought of it as. Which is a pretty interesting analogy for me. It's kind of, you increase resistance. You don't just release it. You can actually remove them out of the way. That's still like removing drag.
Yeah.
And then thrust to the power will be how much, energy you can put into it.
Exactly, right. So your energy versus what's holding you back, and you can remove the resistance, and then you're going to go forward. So those are the two forces, and how you can use them to move forward. And just to review quickly before we go on, if you want to move forward or move faster in your manifestation, you have three choices. Number one, or I guess there are three principles. Number one is you need momentum to move forward. If there's no momentum, there's no resistance. And that will become important soon. No momentum, no resistance. Number two is that in order to move faster, you can either increase momentum or decrease resistance. And number three is that the faster the momentum, the higher the resistance. Okay, so that's very important. And that's good to keep in mind. If you look back at some of your goals, especially the ones you have trouble with, you'll see what's going on there and why you have such resistance in the cases that you do. Now, the next thing I want to discuss is that, again, both of these forces are required. Like I said, no momentum, no resistance. But we get caught up in this illusory world where we think that we can have momentum and no resistance.
That ain't gonna happen.
That's not possible. That's not possible. All right? Because
You need the tension.
you need the tension, right? The structural tension.
And you have both forces in the plane.
Yep.
You don't only just have thrust because...
Right. You can never, in an airplane, you can never have all thrust, no drag, unless the airplane crumbles into pieces, then yeah.
Would be no resistance, I guess, until you hit.
Yeah, no resistance.
Just go...
Right. Or if you're, in science, they always say, in a vacuum, blah, 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 Newton's laws, like inertia, if you're moving forward and nothing acts against you, then you're going to keep moving forward. But, here on Earth, we have air resistance, and that's drag.
Unfortunately, that would be fun.
I guess, but then how would you stop? You'd have to run into something to stop.
We'll just, shoot forward forever.
Anyway, so, we have this illusory idea that we can have no resistance. We say, just, like the Abraham idea, just be in the vortex, just feel good all the time and you'll get there, right? If you're not experiencing resistance, guess what? You're not moving forward.
You're not going to get there either.
You're not going to get there. So, let me tell you, okay, it's great if you're feeling good. That's wonderful. But if you're not experiencing any resistance, you're not moving forward. I'm not saying it has to be crushing resistance. I'm not saying it has to be, like the whole world's on your shoulders or something. But if you're not experiencing doubts, if you're not experiencing fears, if you're not experiencing some kind of resistance, you're not moving forward towards your goal. Or else you already have it, of course. If you already have it, then you already have it. And this doesn't really apply to current level goals because you functionally already have it. You just have to decide to have it and then you have it. So current level goals, it's right there. You can just reach out and take it. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to move forward for that. But a next level goal, you do, or an ultimate level goal, you definitely do. So if you're not experiencing resistance, you're not getting any closer to your goal. So keep that in mind. Quit trying to feel good all day. I'm not saying that's a bad goal, but it's not going to happen if you want to move forward.
Life is about, contrast.
Exactly.
You can't always feel happy-go-lucky, and if you do, you're bipolar. And that's when you're manic.
Right.
You wouldn't know what happiness was if you didn't have it.
Exactly.
Your resistance doesn't have to make you crumble and do all this other stuff. You don't have to make you sad and mad all the time. But you're not going to be, always at super speed. You're going to have to slog through the mud some.
Yeah, you could always have a positive attitude, but you're not going to always be bouncing off the walls.
Right.
You might just feel content or feel blah or whatever. It doesn't matter.
So that's very important to realize. Again, if you're not experiencing resistance, you're not moving forward. And that's not going to work out for you, obviously. So don't gauge your success based on how good you feel. Okay? Because moving forward, and we'll talk about this in a second, requires a balance between momentum and resistance. Before we get there, so some people are in this kind of limbo state of, and I've heard this several times recently actually, of boredom, where they just sort of start, nothing's really hard, but nothing's really happening.
And
I
get that.
That's that no momentum, no resistance state where you're not moving forward. Okay, yeah, life is good, but nothing's happening. Now, sometimes you might want that for a little while, but it's going to get boring. So, it's like another principle of airplanes is, if they're not moving fast enough, they're going to stall, right? So, if you're not applying enough momentum to your goal, because some people will go into this kind of space where they just try to cut resistance, and they're not actually applying momentum. And eventually you're just going to kind of get to this boring place where nothing's really happening because you're not moving forward. You've stalled. You stalled your goal. Right? No momentum, no resistance, or very little to speak of. The only way to get out of that is to apply momentum. To apply the gas, so to speak. You need to move forward. So that's, if you're catching yourself getting bored with your goal because you're not really focusing on it, why are you doing that? There may be a reason for that. You may be afraid of moving forward with it. That's what someone told me recently, that they felt safer not moving, but they got bored with it. So why are you in that situation? That's what you're doing to yourself. So the next thing, again, you have to balance these two things. You have to have both the momentum and the resistance. And the bigger the goal, the more resistance you're going to have. So a big, big, big goal is going to demand a lot of resistance. Okay? It's going to. You cannot escape it. You cannot get around it. You cannot circumvent it somehow. Some people say, like, there are these, I always hear these stories of people who get into law of attraction, and they say they want to start a successful business, which is great, or they want to become a CEO of a big corporation or whatever, or they want to be a millionaire or whatnot. And all they do is visualize it all day and feel really good about it and blah, 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 blah. But they don't experience resistance. They just keep saying, oh yeah, it's going to come, it's going to come, it's going to come. They're deluding themselves. If they actually were working on that goal and, it were clearly so out of their reach, out of their, above their point of homeostasis, if you remember that principle, they're going to be hit with a lot of resistance. Okay? So resistance, I keep telling people this because they say, I'm hit by all this resistance, I don't know what to do. Resistance is a good sign.
It means you're going to get it.
Right? It means you're moving towards your goal.
Yeah, it means you're moving towards it, especially if you know which ways to move. There might be massive roadblocks in the way, but
right.
If you know to go in that direction, that's good.
Right.
It's like, either the universe or whatever your divine powers. Are you sure? Are you sure?
Right.
Are you sure?
Right.
You sure you want this goal?
Exactly. Or it's, again, it's just your own subconscious saying, okay.
The same thing.
Well, no, it's saying you programmed me with these other programs that aren't compatible with the goal that you want. So choose. It gives you ultimatums. Okay, this program or your goal. This program or your goal. This program or your goal. And you have to choose, and we've talked before about how to do that. So, that's what happens. So if you have resistance, it's a good sign. It means you're moving forward. Okay, you don't want to not have, obviously, eventually you do, but you don't want to not have resistance right now because it means you're not moving towards it. If you're experiencing resistance, that means you found the pathway to your goal. Otherwise, it'd be easy. Otherwise, you'd be just whatever, feeling good all the time. But because you've chosen a goal, you've made it your own, and you decided to go after it, and it's out of your current realm of belief, of easy belief, you're going to hit into roadblocks. You're going to hit into resistance. That's just how it is. And the bigger the goal, the bigger the resistance. Okay, so again, there are two ways of moving forward. You can increase that momentum by focusing, or you can cut out or cut down the resistance. Now, I always tell people, realize what part of this you're at, because you're either going to generally be one of three places in this manifestation process. Number one is you're going to be moving forward pretty nicely, feeling decently well, not having too much resistance, but you'd like to move faster. What do? You ramp up the momentum. Okay, because you're not really experiencing a lot of resistance. So that's not really the problem. You ramp up the momentum, and I guarantee you, when you ramp up the momentum, you will get more resistance to work on. And that's great, right? Number two, if you are experiencing crushing resistance or really, really overwhelming resistance, you do not ramp up the momentum. Please do not.
Do not. Yes, do this, because you also will not get your goal.
Right. No. That's like running into a brick wall and be like, okay, my goal's on the other side of this wall, and if I keep running into it long enough,
I'll break the bricks.
I'll break the bricks. You're going to break yourself first.
You break yourself first, most likely. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're experiencing a lot of resistance, then the thing to do is to cut down on that resistance. Don't focus on your goal for a while. I tell people, take 3 days, sometimes a week if it's really bad. I call this process decompression, because it's like recovering from that big ramp up of momentum and getting back to a normal place. You need to just focus on letting go as much as you have to. Don't focus on the goal, because focusing on the goal will add more energy to it, which will make you go faster. You do not want that. If you're traveling down the road 100 miles an hour and you're having trouble keeping control of the car, the thing to do is not to press the gas pedal down further.
You've got enough momentum.
Right. The thing to do is to slow down a bit and gain control, and then you can see what you want to do next. So, start applying those brakes, get the resistance handled, and then things will get more comfortable. So that's, and when we've talked, I'm not going to go through techniques. We've talked about techniques endlessly in my, the class we did, the Art of Reality Creation 2.0 covers all this. I'm not going to cover techniques. I'm just going to cover basic principles here. The techniques. The techniques are pretty basic. They're pretty simple. So that's not really where the issue is. And of course you can get coaching if you want help with that. But we just want the principles. So if you are in that second place of high resistance, don't focus on the goal. Just focus on cutting down the resistance. Number 3 is that limbo place I talked about of boredom, where you're kind of neither one nor the other, neither momentum nor resistance. You're just sort of hanging in the middle, not moving forward and not really feeling resistance either. And the thing to do there, again, is to apply momentum. So in most cases, you're going to apply momentum. If you're experiencing crushing resistance, you're going to cut the resistance, and then you can handle it from there. So, this gives you something to do. This gives you a plan of action, no matter where you are. Think about your goal. Let's take any current goal you have. Obviously, you can be happy with your current momentum. If you're satisfied with how it's going, then don't touch it. Keep doing what you've been doing. If you're having momentum, not too much resistance, but you could be going faster, you're kind of like, well, I wouldn't mind going a bit faster with this, then apply more momentum. Okay? Focus on it more each day, have more intense emotions regarding it. Focus plus emotions is the formula, basically, for more momentum. And as you go faster, then you will balance out this formula. You will, of momentum and resistance, and the resistance will get more intense, and you can determine where enough is for you. If you have too much resistance, you're getting crushed, then cut that out. Again, I'm not going to go over techniques, but cut that out until it's bearable, and then you can pick up the momentum again. Okay, you start focusing on your goal again. If you're in that limbo state where you're bored, then you can start applying momentum and do that until resistance makes itself known and until it's to a point where you don't want any more of it. So, no matter where you are, you have something you can do. You have a roadmap, you have a plan of action for how to move forward and how to proceed with your goal. Now, just like with airplanes, the thrust and the drag balance out, and that's when it maintains a constant speed, okay? A constant velocity, you could say. So here, you will balance out momentum and resistance. I recommend for the maximum efficiency, I guess, for the maximum momentum, to get resistance to a point where it's just bearable, but you don't want any more. It's like, yeah, this is pretty tough. I can handle it, but I don't want any more of it.
That's what you want.
It's a fine line. It's a fine line you have to walk, but that's what you have to do. That's what I recommend. If the resistance isn't much, ramp up the momentum. If the resistance is too much, stop focusing on the goal and cut down the resistance. So it's a constant balance of these two forces. You're not trying to cut out resistance. You're not trying to altogether erase resistance from your life, because you're not going to do it. As long as you're working on goals, you're going to have resistance. The trick is to keep resistance at a level that is maintainable, that is bearable, that you can live with while moving forward towards your goals. That's the trick. And that's what you have to do, right? So you have to maintain that balance, and that will help you get to your goals the most quickly that you can. And again, if you've totally stalled altogether, then you really have to ramp up and let, the resistance will assert itself. Again, if you're sort of moving along nicely and you're gliding along and you're not really experiencing too much resistance, you just haven't applied enough pressure. You just haven't applied. I've never met anyone in all my work doing this that hasn't gotten resistance when they've applied momentum, when they've applied power. No one. Unless you're right there on top of it, and then you'll just slide into the goal. Great. Okay. Now let's work on another one. Right? So that's great. But until you get that goal, you're going to have resistance. So again, don't try to cut it out altogether. Just let yourself balance those forces, and that will help you to get there the most quickly. That will help you to move forward. That's really the trick to moving forward on all of this. And again, you're going to experience more resistance the more you move forward. It's just going to happen. The bigger the goal, the bigger the resistance. So you just have to work on balancing. I know people don't like resistance. They want to get out of it. They want to just be happy and life be perfect and whatnot. That's not realistic. If you're working on goals, I'm not saying you're not going to have a time in life where things are good and you're happy and, you're feeling good and whatnot. Of course you will. But, I had a blog post quite a while ago about the two modes of the manifestation process, which was tension and release, just like the muscles. Remember this?
Yep.
And so, you'll have those release modes where you're sort of just hanging out and things are good and things are settling and whatever. But you will get bored. You will seek for something new to occupy your attention. You will want something else. You will, yearn for something new, yearn for something more exciting. Okay? If you allow yourself to. Some people just kind of exist in this sort of vaguely unsatisfied state for their whole lives, and they never actually let themselves do that. But if that's functioning properly for you, if you're letting yourself dream, if you're letting yourself think and want and desire, then you will eventually get out of this release mode and back into this tension mode where you're again wanting, where you're again looking for something else to achieve. After I got my job, it's been over 2 months now. I know it's not very long. For me, I move fast, okay? Right, Justin? You know this, Justin.
Yeah.
Christine knows this. I move fast,
Yeah,
right?
do.
I mean,
I
I increased, my income probably almost triple in 8 or 9 months. Okay? 9 months, let's say. Almost triple in 9 months. That is a pretty decent feat. Okay? Now it's settled, and now I'm like, okay, now what's next? Okay, so, but after I got my job, I sort of relaxed for a while, 2 months, and enjoyed it and got used to the new energies and just settled into that new goal. You have to let the energy settle. And then my mind goes to, okay, what's next? There's always what's next. And, now, like recently, I just actually today signed up for actually business coaching to take co-creation coaching to the next level. I'm super excited about that. I was never able to do that before.
That was weird.
That was super weird. And that's the next level. That, I signed up for the 6-month program to help me to really improve co-creation coaching. So you'll be seeing some changes, by the way, coming up. I have my first session on July 6th, so I'm super excited. But, I was ready to go. We talked today, and I'm like, yeah, I want to do this. So that's the what's next. Right? That's the tension mode again, and then I'm sure, I'll have plenty of tension with that, and then there'll be another release, and then blah, it goes back and forth and back and forth. So, yes, you will have times in life where you're happy and contented, and things are great and whatever, but eventually you'll want something else, and you'll have, resistance all over again. It's just like, again, coming back to the airplane. Okay, you want to fly from, New York to LA or something. You're going to take off, you're going to have thrust, you're going to have drag, whatever, all the way there, then you're going to land. Right? Now you're there, woohoo, things are great, whatever, you're on your, if it's a vacation or whatever.
That was the most unenthusiastic woohoo.
Woohoo! Is that better?
Yes.
Okay, good. So you're on your vacation or business trip or whatever it is. Eventually you have to come back home, and then you come back on the plane and you're thrust and drag again, and then you land and everything's good again. And then maybe eventually you decide to go somewhere else. So, that's like your goals. What's your destination? What's your destination? Except you never return to where you came from. In this, in our analogy, you never return to where you came from. Because that would be going backwards. Right? So what's your next destination? After you get to your destination, you stay there for a while and you enjoy it and you settle in. And then you want another destination. What's your next destination? And then the whole cycle starts all over again. And you have more resistance and you have more momentum. It's just going to go on for your whole life. And, in my opinion, multiple lifetimes until you are ready to move on to the next level. And that will probably have its own cycle of resistance and momentum. So, that's how it is. That's how it works. That's what we're made for. For this one thing after another. What are we going to do next? What are we going to do next? It's fun. It's exciting. But you have to get used to that resistance. You have to be okay with that resistance. And that's what you have to do. So hopefully that helped to clarify. Again, apply this to your current goals. See where you are. See what you need to do next. Ask us in the comments if you're not sure. If things aren't clear. I hope it is. I really like this analogy a lot, but I'm kind of technical. So if
You're a nerd.
Well, I tried to give it in a few different ways to explain it really well. But so once again, if you would like to see our show notes or to read our transcript or to leave a comment, which we always love comments, you can come to cocreationcoaching.org/create019. And if you want to subscribe to us on iTunes or to rate or review us, you can go to cocreationcoaching.org/create-iTunes, and that will redirect you to our Apple page on iTunes. So I hope everyone enjoyed this discussion. Right now my plan is I'm alternating blog posts and podcasts, so we will be back hopefully in 2 weeks. That's my current plan. Because right now I can't do more than one in a week. But we're trying to alternate blog posts and podcasts. That's fun. So I hope everyone enjoys. Again, feel free to submit your questions so we know what to talk about. That would be awesome. Otherwise, I hope that everyone has a wonderful weekend or a wonderful week, whenever it is, whenever I post this. And once again, I am Brandon Oliveris.
And I'm Christine Oliveris.
I'm Justin Williams.
He's not sure about that. Anything is possible.